Yeah, I feel like people who are neurotypical, I feel like they are able to regulate their emotions quicker and easier.
Reach episode 13, Brothers of Purpose
Let's
podcast.
go.
Let's have some fun. We've got Bethan Kershaw on.
Hey guys,
Great, everyone.
First female guest as well,
Yeah.
which is good.
I mean, that's a slay, isn't it? Of course it would be me.
I love that.
We've been talking about this for a while. It's good.
I'm really excited. I can't wait to get deep with you.
We've got loads that we can chew through. Obviously, one of the reasons we wanted to get you on was you and Alex have a bit of common ground. You both have ADHD. Obviously, the podcast is kind of centered around mental health. We'll branch and often talk about other stuff as well. But I just thought that would be probably a good place to start. But also, just tell people a little bit more about Bethan. Who is Bethan? What's she all about?
Who is it? I don't know. I have an identity crisis. I don't know. Do you know what, right? I feel like with me ADHD, over the years, I definitely have struggled with identity because I feel like I'm just trying to mask and fit into society. Do you know what I mean? But now that I've actually got my diagnosis, it's a lot easier to be you know what, actually, I kind of do know who I am. I kind of know where I'm going in my life. I know what my boundaries are. I know what my values and stuff are. Whereas I think growing up, I didn't have that. I was oh my God, I don't know. And I was kind of picking and choosing and I would adapt my personality to who I was around. Yeah. I was a bit of a chameleon in that sense, you know?
Yeah. It builds your self-awareness having a diagnosis so much.
So I relate 100% to what you're saying. I agree with what you say there. It does build your self-awareness. It gives you a justification for everything. But
it does come with a label. Which is the downside.
What's the downside with the label though? Who cares?
I agree.
Who cares with a label?
From someone who's got the diagnosis, that label was right, that gives me, now I have understanding.
100%.
Yeah.
It depends on what the label is.
Yeah.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
But it depends on what the label is because ADHD, generally the connotations of ADHD nowadays, if we're going to make it pop culture is you've got a really busy mind. And that's about it.
Yeah.
And you kind of concentrate.
Yeah.
But then if you had a different diagnosis and it had different connotations, obviously sometimes people get the diagnosis and they sit really heavy.
Yeah.
A lot of heavy emotions.
Yeah. I think that depends how much time you put into understanding it. Because ADHD is different for each person. Your ADHD is different to mine. There's certain elements which are similar in the way that, our brains are going to go a million miles an hour this episode. But there's also, it's completely unique. But it is definitely an advantage. But what you were saying about trying to, for me, I was dotting from social group to social group, and I used to pride myself on thinking, right, I can put a mask on, and by the time I leave this room, everyone's going to love me, because it was just trying to be this chameleon.
Yeah, yeah.
But I had no identity or no purpose.
Yeah.
And that caused me to just feel really lost.
Yeah.
So when I got the diagnosis, it was okay, I understand it. And it made a lot of things make sense.
Yes, that's the same with me. The minute, because I think before then, I always thought there's something wrong with us. There's literally something wrong with us. Why can I not do normal things? Why am I not picking on certain social cues? Why am I not picking up on this stuff? What's going on? But then the second that I got my diagnosis, don't get us wrong, it wasn't it was more
guess that it was ADHD?
100%. I always had it. I always had a feeling there was something going on. I knew there was something going on, and I did guess it was ADHD. And to be honest, a lot of my followers would literally watch what I was doing, and the message would be are you sure you're not ADHD? I don't know whether I take that as a compliment or not, but so basically, it was actually a lot of followers and stuff that would comment on my stuff, and I'm I wonder what that is. So that kind of sparked this kind of I really wanted curiosity to go and see if it is what it is. Once I got my diagnosis, though, I was just it was such a relief for me personally.
Because then I didn't. It wasn't a straightforward process though, because
never is.
Never.
Understanding what medications are.
Of course.
Things like that as well.
Yeah. I know it hasn't been straightforward. I'm still kind of learning about it now. I'm still figuring out, what medication is right for me and right for my brain. Obviously, when I was really desperate, when I was really going through a bad time, with me ADHD, my identity, the kind of what's like just not being able to do certain things. I was so depressed. I was so depleted in dopamine. And I was like trying to figure out what was going on. Lost my train of thought. Sorry, ADHD.
Do you know what it is? It's actually a really common symptom, brain fog.
Yeah.
Oh, it is. I'll get really excited about something and then halfway through I completely forget where I was going.
Forget where I was going with the conversation. What was the question, sorry?
No, just your experience of just processing it all. Like not just from a medication standpoint, but like, the diagnosis, it can pull like the rug under your feet a little bit, just kind of leaning into a new identity in that sense.
It gave me quite a lot of freedom in a way, because it was sort of, for me, it was like, right, I understand this now. So it was, for me, I was at a point where I had there wasn't much stability in my life. There were certain things that went well, but I just couldn't understand why things weren't clicking. Yeah. Because I think you're clearly the same in the respect that you have a huge amount of ability and you've been very successful.
Do you think more people have it than what we know?
Oh, 100%. I think as well, like even people like say like our moms and their moms and like further on, like we didn't have this information, but like so ADHD, well, actually, I want to know something really interesting. So ADHD and like CPTSD, so like complex trauma, they've got like very similar traits. So they get misdiagnosed quite a lot. But I think that, so like ADHD is like, what's it called? Is it genetic? It basically comes down.
Hereditary.
Yeah, hereditary. Yeah, sorry. So it's hereditary, right? But I reckon, like, say, like my grandma, like I reckon she's got it, but she's never been diagnosed. But she's been on antidepressants all her life because you think it's depression, don't you? It gets misdiagnosed all the time.
Completely right.
And I reckon, like it's definitely. I feel like people are getting a lot more understanding of it now. But I also feel like there's such a like stigma to it, where it's almost like a little bit of a TikTok trend. Oh, like everyone's got ADHD. But then I feel like it takes away the actual pain that you experience when you have ADHD and it's not controlled.
I can totally relate to that because it applies to like bipolar, anxiety, depression, like everything gets, I call it TikTokified. So like,
exactly.
It's like once it's TikTokified, it's like
it's almost not serious anymore. Yeah. It's kind of like nobody's taking it seriously. You know what I mean?
But there's two ways to look at it though, right? Which is one, obviously there has been a lot more people talking about it on TikTok, and there's probably some people which maybe don't have some of the symptoms and say they do. But it's also brought a lot of awareness. There's probably a lot of people that didn't think they had it or weren't aware they had it. But now they think, well, actually, hang on. Because I remember that's how I first found out that I thought I had it. Because I was going through all these things. I was like, everything is matching up.
Yeah, when people would speak about it and they say, this is what I experience. Like, I do this, like, what's it called, like executive dysfunction to the point where I can't.
How important would you say representation is with this? Because when I like seen bipolar being TikTokified, it was all like white girls, and I'm a 6'2" black man. Like I don't see myself in these white girls who are talking about having bipolar. Yeah. So for me, representation was quite a big thing because I was like, am I the only black man with bipolar or something? So did you ever have that or not?
Me personally, no. I think because obviously like with, I don't know, like I feel with ADHD, it's a bit different because it's, again, because it's TikTokified now, it's almost like so many people are talking about it because so many people are experiencing the same things. But I also think you have to take into consideration the fact that like algorithm as well, because you might not be on the algorithm where people are speaking about it. Does that make sense? Like
that's a very good point because you only see what you're exposed to.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a very good point.
So like, so we can't even sit here and say that that's not even a case and that people aren't doing that. It just might not be that you're just not seeing it because of your algorithm.
It could be something that's unrepresented, not out of like society, but just social media platforms.
Yeah.
No, that's a fair point actually.
Yeah, no, I think for me it was there was plenty of information for me to see, I think, but also I was pretty introverted with it. I wasn't, once I found out about that, I was just sort of doing my own research on it and looking into it and trying to understand it. But what you were saying about family, that's so funny because my sisters both now have traits. One of my sisters just been diagnosed with a specific mental health illness herself. And then my mum is now convinced that she's got ADHD, but it's the same symptoms. They all take antidepressants.
Yeah.
But it's because they haven't understand their neurodivergency.
Yeah. And that's
it's so funny, isn't it?
And that's one thing I wanted to talk to you about, actually, being neurodivergent. So me and Daps were having a conversation about this a while ago, like the differences between being somebody who's neurotypical and being somebody who's neurodivergent. Obviously, things like ADHD and bipolar generally puts you in that category of people who are neurodivergent. And well, this is it. So my argument is everyone is neurodivergent. If you study yourself enough, you will probably find some traits, maybe some flaws, you could say, that point towards you being neurodivergent. And for you to say, by definition, I am neurotypical, what does that actually mean?
I don't know, because you're asking a neurodivergent.
It'd be boring as fuck, I'll tell you that. Neurotypical, like, you get this, being neurodivergent, as long as you understand it and you don't just focus on what some of the negatives can be, it's amazing. It gets you to think differently. The way you will think will be completely different to a lot of people that you'll encounter. And that gives you an advantage if you see it that way.
100%. I think if you've got like control of it, because I remember like before I got my diagnosis and stuff, like I really struggled with it bad. Like I was in such a bad way. Like I was in such a bad mindset. And I was very like, like fluctuating. Like I was always kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And it was just, I wasn't able to like stay consistent with anything. But then I feel like with neurotypical people, it's almost like, I feel like with
neurotypical a box sort of thing.
You are?
The fitting into a box sort of thing.
Well, I don't know. I feel like it's almost just like of like stable mind, isn't it? Like it's like, but like not in a bad way or in a boring way, but just kind of like very neutral.
Well, what's a stable mind?
This is what I mean. I don't understand. So I don't get how they can come to that conclusion. If you can say like, right, you don't have autism, you don't have ADHD. Those are the two main ones on the neurodivergency spectrum. So I'm assuming
what makes you human, or are you just a robot at that point?
But I mean, but they say it's a spectrum, right? So if it's a spectrum, everyone's on it.
Yeah.
So I don't see how you can be neurotypical, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
No, it is.
Because there's that, what's that called? There's that thing that they measure if you have like CPTSD or bipolar. It's like a what is it called? It's like a thing. So like, when you have your neutral state and then you have your hyper and then hypo.
Mania.
Yeah, or hypo.
So like a spectrum of a mood.
Yeah. So a mood spectrum. So I feel like with neurotypicals, I feel like they're able to like stabilise their mood, because obviously with neurospicy people, I feel like we struggle with our mood regulation a lot.
100%.
Neurospicy
I like that.
Neurospicy.
I just created a trend now.
So I feel
like... That's a
like...
good way to put it.
Yeah, I feel like people who are neurotypical, I feel like they are able to regulate their emotions quicker and easier. Do you know what I mean?
Do you get fixated on things? Like if you get something excites you, do you just put all your energy into that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
For about 4 weeks, I get it all completed, and then I don't end, and then I move on to the next one.
With Joy, I think you bang on the money there in terms of like it being a mood spectrum thing. My thing is though, what does stable mood even look like?
Well, let's get it up. Why don't we have a look and see at the thing? Why don't we Google?
Pull it up, Daps. Pull it up.
Get Google. It's called, what is it called?
Because it's interesting, like how
spectrum?
Would you actually define somebody
mood spectrum
who's stable?
Well, this is the thing. So, because obviously if you're in a hyper...
There you
go. No, it doesn't look like that. Where's my phone? Get my phone. I reckon I've got a screenshot somewhere, because that's another hyperfixation that I have. I screenshot everything.
And never look at it again.
Never ever look. I'm just like, I'll save that for later. I'll save that for later.
So I think that's pretty accurate, I think that's pretty accurate, because...
So you think they're just able to stay middle of the road?
So that
makes sense.
So what's interesting about that
this is it. Yeah. So it's called a window of tolerance. So it's called a window of tolerance. So you've got your hyperarousal, which is like your high energy, anxiety, anger. Right.
So that probably describes like what you're experiencing, depending on where you're on that spectrum.
How often do I say I struggle with tolerance?
Well, that's
funny. I've never seen that before.
How window of tolerance? Yeah.
So obviously hypoarousal, which is like your depression, your lethargic.
one or the other.
Yeah, so I feel like that's where you can distinguish like whether someone's of like neurotypical. I don't know. I feel like
I think that's. I've never seen that before. That's brilliant.
What is interesting is on both ends of the spectrum, mindfulness is the remedy.
Yeah.
But they say when you're neurodivergent, you're either overstimulated or understimulated. So that makes complete sense.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like it's to do with like it's all like nervous system and stuff, isn't it?
What's
and like
been your experience of mindfulness? Because I know it's been a big part of your journey.
Right. So I went through a couple of spiritual awakenings, right? I did. I went through a few. I went through Dark Night of the Soul, right? Basically, it's just depression. And what I done is I started really looking into like self-development, and I started like, I don't know where it really triggered off. I think it triggered off like when I went through like a really bad breakup with someone, and then I was like, no, this is it. We're gonna really sort myself out now. And then I feel like that triggered off into like a bit of a spiritual awakening where I started learning about breath work. I started learning about chakras. I started learning about like the universe and all these different dimensions. Like I started learning all these things. I think I went through spiritual psychosis, you know. I'm not even gonna lie. I think I experienced
spiritual psychosis is a real thing.
A real thing. And do you know what? I think I went through
spiritual psychosis, the quickest way to describe it is you just feel like you've discovered the matrix and now you're outside of it.
Oh, right.
Basically,
yeah.
And it's
I've
almost
never heard it explained that way.
Yeah.
And you know about the universe, you know about all these different, you know about energies and stuff like that. And
I love that.
The reason why it's so disorientating is we have like social constructs. So everyone believes in social constructs. So like if you got a £10 note out and you took 8 billion people, everyone believes the £10 note is a real thing, but we're the ones that give it value and meaning. It's just a bit of paper.
It's just a bit,
But then you can extrapolate that to like almost everything.
Every single thing in your life. You can
then outside of yourself because you're like, well, what is real?
And then you start like going
100%.
deep into it and it's like, where am I coming from? Like, where do I, how did I get here? And you start thinking about how your soul was formed and like, what is the purpose? There must be a bigger hidden meaning. It's too much. It is too much.
Lot, isn't it?
But you know what? It is a lot. It is a lot. But you know what's so crazy though? I think like for me, I went through this spiritual psychosis, but like, and some of the things that I even look back and think, and the things that I'd said, and I think like, how did nobody turn around and say, Bethan, what are you talking about? Bethan, like everyone was just so like blasé about it. It was fine, and I definitely think I went through spiritual psychosis just because of how I was feeling.
It can be really mild though as well.
Yeah.
Like, so confirmation bias. So if you believe something strongly enough, you will actively look for evidence to back up.
Find it, like your brain finds it.
That could just be the start of a spiritual.
I'm a huge believer in that.
Spiritual psychosis because you literally just believe whatever you want to believe.
I was really deep into like all the chakras and everything. And have you heard of things called what's it called, telepathy or whatever? Telepathy. It's where like they move things with our mind. I would.
You sat there trying to do it.
Yeah, I've literally got a video on my phone where I had a crystal.
Yeah, maybe you do need to get on more.
I went through spiritual psychosis. I remember. I was
walk
like,
in your room and
like took the crystals. I was like, I can do it, and I convinced myself that I moved it. I was like, oh my god, I'm like better than everyone on the planet.
It doesn't work. You're just like.
Yeah. And then there was another time where my vision started like playing up as well. Like I would lie in bed. And to be honest, this is when I was drinking a lot. Like I was on Geordie Shore, I was drinking quite a lot. And like even when I was not filming or anything like that, I was still partying a lot. I was going, how are you partying, drinking a lot.
What did you ever explore? Is it clairvoyancy, where people can read your mind and stuff like that? Did you ever explore that? Like,
never explored that, but I was always paranoid about it. So I'd always be a bit paranoid to be like, can you read my mind? Like, and I'm looking, I'm thinking, oh, you read my mind? Like, you know, like weird things. But I feel like that also comes from like, you know, like say if you're like a little bit of an anxious person.
You tried hypnotherapy once though, didn't you?
Yes, I did, yeah.
Yeah, because you've been...
Oh, love it.
Yeah,
love it.
yeah.
Game changer, honestly. It's been incredible for me. The change has been just so rapid. But it's on, and each
How
session.
does it compare to normal therapy, would you say?
There's a lot of elements which are the same. I say the setting and the feel of the setting's the same. But the process of what you go through is completely different. It's less back and forth. I had an initial consultation where you basically go from day dot to today in as much detail as you can. She'll then create certain things. She'll discuss what you'd like to get out of it. And then she creates, like I came back for the session and she had, right, these are the 5 topics I'm going to talk about. And she'll, so I'm not looking at her, I'm lying on the bed and she's over there and her voice will change and she'll say, you're probably going to go into some type of state.
Meditative state, yeah.
And it was just surreal. And you're going in and out of it. And then she starts counting 1 to 10, you're back in the room. And the change was just instant. How I dealt with certain things,
Yeah.
So you've tried hypnotherapy, but you said something about is it EDMR?
EMDR, it's called EMDR, yeah. So basically it's like a psychotherapy and what it does is it uses like bilateral stimulation. So like stimulating both parts of like your body or like your brain and like looking right left to right and you're trying to stimulate both parts of your brain whilst you're basically in a meditative state whilst you're talking about things like trauma and things like that, you know, things that you haven't been able to emotionally process.
Is that the way you see people just break down when they're going through that? Because like what happens I mean, listen, it's quite a like intense process. Like I've only done like 1 session at the minute, and also what you do is it probably takes a few sessions because you have to curate like a safe space.
Really fucks with your like sensory perception so much.
Everything.
Like,
Trauma's
your
huge.
Nervous system, like you could literally walk into a
It changes it, bro.
And like your fists.
Well, rewires it.
Yes,
like it rewires
exactly
it all, doesn't it?
That's what my therapist talks about.
But I think what it is it's like I think like from like a aspect of like growing up and things like that, like people didn't have the knowledge on how to co-regulate with like children. I feel like they didn't have the knowledge. It wasn't something like, you know, you've got some families that do like,
yes, you can do that. No, you can't.
Yeah. Basically, it was kind of like that. Whereas like, I feel like because as like society, like when we're growing up and like all of this, because people didn't have the knowledge, like people don't really know how to regulate their own emotions or how to like self-soothe or anything like that. So for me personally, I know that like my kind of attachment style, like with like relationships, like whether they're platonic or like romantic, it's quite like anxious.
So one question I had for you was, do you feel like it is a social thing or like, is it like genetics and hereditary?
What?
So like,
I think it's a bit of both.
Bit of both.
I think so. Do you think?
I'm not really sure because I feel like culture comes into it.
Well, yeah.
People, how they're pet. I think it was Dom who was saying you can only parent how you've been parented.
Yeah.
And,
it's generational. Yeah. It's harder to change. You can change it, but it's harder to change it, I think.
Yeah. Once you've kind of got a base level of a certain like, you know, I feel like people didn't have the social tools to when they're raising children to be like to understand how to like co-regulate with children. So then obviously like as a parent, like maybe they get a little bit overwhelmed, and then that's when you get like certain like
snappy.
You get like snappy, or you're getting like told off. Like say if you're like knocking a glass of milk and you're like, what you doing? Like you know, like that's dysregulated nervous systems. That, but then that like even small things like that, it causes trauma for people. And trauma isn't like, it's something that shows up constantly in your life. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't mean that you're necessarily like experiencing it all of the time, but your body doesn't recognize when you think about
fight or flight. You're just in fight or flight. So it's like, I think the easiest way I can describe it is it's not how you see in the movies where you have some little lass who's curled up in a ball and afraid to talk.
Yeah.
It's sometimes your fists being clenched and your heart rate pounding out your chest when the room is totally chilled out. Well, that's a trauma response.
I had no idea that I had real abandonment issues from trauma from when I was younger, but it was starting to affect the relationship I'm in.
Yeah.
So it was starting to, it was coming out, and like I've always said, I'm not jealous at all, but I was suddenly being a really jealous person, and I was second guessing things.
Is a son of a bitch, right?
And but it 100%. But it was something which I'd never really unpacked. So I'm really enjoying doing it. But it all stems from certain elements of trauma in my
I
past.
think it shows up the most in intimate relationships.
Yes, I do as well. I feel like, so I went celibate for a long time, didn't I? Like, I literally went 2.5 years, a little bit over 2.5 years celibate, because I think I went through such like, I don't know, just such like toxic relationships and like just not.
It sounded like it was just misalignment
After misalignment, and just like not getting the understanding and like just feeling really disrespected all the time. Like, there's only certain things that like I expect from a relationship. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't do the things that you shouldn't do. You know what I mean? It's very easy, common sense. But then I think like for me, basically, lost my train of thought again.
When you say misalignment, do you mean wrong guys? Or they didn't get you, or you didn't get them?
I think I put too much of my like need of like feeling loved and valued into somebody else. So when they didn't treat us right, or if they did cheat or like whatever, but if I didn't have like the evidence, instead of going, I love myself too much, I'm not going to let you, I'm not letting anyone do that to me. It was kind of like, I would feed into, no, I would never do that. I would feed into the words instead of like looking at the actions of what somebody's doing. Because you want to believe the partner that you're with isn't, you know, betraying you or doing something like that. You want to believe that. Whereas like, I feel like now I'm definitely more of like, I definitely see a little bit anxious attachment in there still. I think it's something that you have to like really work on, but you find more of the things that you need to work on when you're in relationships, because you're triggering each other all the time.
Perspective is men.
That's very true.
Men don't cheat because they're not in love. They cheat because they're insecure. Right. So it's more of a...
I disagree. I don't think that somebody who's insecure would go out of their way to think that they have the right to go and do and get multiple women. I don't think that's insecurity at all. I think men know exactly what they're doing.
No, so this is an interesting...
Oh, they're aware of what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
It's not a lack of awareness. They're fully aware. But I think what it is the insecurity means there's a gaping hole in your heart or in your brain. And that hole has to be filled by something. And usually, because of how primal men are, it's filled by the next best thing when we think about your most primal state, which tends to be women, sex.
What's primal mean?
Primal. So like, if you think, how would you describe it?
Animalistic. So you're talking, animalistic, sort of like really back to caveman, like that sort of just core understanding.
But the thing is, I feel like when people say that, it's like, yeah, but like animalistic, but then you don't go around like sniffing each other's horses. That's what dogs do. Do you know what I mean? Like there's an element of these are able.
That's true, but you'd be surprised I've met some guys.
You're not wrong. Yeah, don't underestimate men.
Don't underestimate men.
No, but I agree.
You're right. It's a question of emotional intelligence first. Because
it's gone.
It's like, how stupid could a man be who is also emotionally intelligent? I think that's what women underestimate.
Men are a lot more insecure than they let off, and than women.
Men are so insecure. Men are so insecure,
and they hide it with the toxic masculinity.
As a man, if you are a woman and let's say you give birth, but you haven't achieved anything else in your life, society generally will still see you as a success because you've gave birth and you're a mother. As a man, if you don't make something of yourself, society sees you as a bum.
Right.
So naturally, there's this little voice in the back of every man's head which is saying, I have to make something of myself. And sure, of course, women probably have a voice like that as well. But in the back of your mind, you know, generally in society, well, you know, my most primal role is to be a nurturer. That might not be giving birth, but like you're a nurturer. In some sense.
The women are nurturers.
These are just societal societal things. Everyone's got their own opinion.
But then the question comes back to like, what then makes a man who sleeps and cheats with multiple people, how's that giving men purpose? That's like a really...
It doesn't. And that's when a man finds himself, because you lose yourself. You lose yourself in that process. It's spiritual suicide. Because if you're sleeping around with loads of women, that's transmutation of energy. Every interaction is transmutation of energy. So it's spiritual suicide. You don't know who you are anymore as a man when you do that.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I think I've got
it's not an excuse.
No, it's not. It's
but it's definitely what manifests.
I think it comes down to it's poor communication. It's the man feeling that they have all this weight on their shoulders, which yes they do, but so does everyone or anyone trying to achieve something.
Which is why I don't think it's an excuse.
No, it's not.
But
I think it just comes down to character. I'll be honest.
There's an element of that. Sure.
I wouldn't even say it's an element, bro. I'd probably say it's the whole picture. It's just as men.
And also like
lines between personality and character.
I think I mean, you could probably put so many spins on it as to why men feel that's acceptable. I feel they get this gratification, or not necessarily gratification, but the attention they get. And it's so short-lived. And I would go as far as to say probably they regret it immediately after, because once they get that dopamine rush. Yeah. But it is funny how the dynamics in relationships is predominantly the man that will do that. But then in the day, they'll tend to move on to the next partner. Whereas I think not all men, I mean, me specifically, I haven't had a huge amount of relationships. But then again, I enjoy my own time. And I know to a point, you've been fairly similar with that. I'm not one of the guys that dots from woman to woman.
I think as well, if you're a high value female, you have to understand how to operate around high value men, because high value women are pretty much wanted by everyone. I would argue. I mean, if you're a man who's really insecure, you might be intimidated by a high value female. But if you're a high value female, generally you've got a lot going for you. So you're probably desirable to everyone. But that also means high value men, well, what role do they play? So there has to be some sort of like understand, because no high value person's going to go for a low value person. It's high value people looking for other high value people.
Most times, but that situation does happen.
But it usually happens as it stems from insecurity, though, right? It does happen. So I'm just making the assumption that it's two people who are secure within themselves. Being emotionally intelligent, being secure within yourself and being high value doesn't all of a sudden mean that you're going to meet somebody who's got those same traits and qualities and everything's going to be hunky-dory.
I think when I started doing like a lot of like my inner work and stuff like that, I think it's actually made it hard. And especially like, because even when I've like done Geordie Shore and stuff like that, like it's kind of made it a bit difficult to date anyways, like being in TV, like not a lot of men. Obviously there's this stereotypical thing of like, oh, like how many people are you slept with? And it's like, is that like a fetish or something? Like, what are you talking about? Why do you want to know? Like, and then I don't know. So I feel like in them kind of like situations, I feel like it's difficult for like women to date. Like I think personally, from my experience. Then when I've started to do a lot more like self-development and like self-understanding and understanding, even harder. So now I'm like,
I know what you mean.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, I don't know, like when I date people and then I'm like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of the time what I experience, and I don't know whether that's because of me attachment style, like I attract a lot of like avoidant men or like avoidant people. So like in the beginning, they show up as this representative and they're so emotionally intelligent and they're so nurturing and they're so like understand, they want to get to know us. And I'm like, dopamine, I'm not going to anyway, so giz. And then what'll happen is like you get 3 months down the line and what happens is they start to retreat and do the opposite. They start saying the opposite of what they were saying in the beginning. To me, I'm like, how is this? What are you doing? Like literally, what are you doing? Like,
no, that's interesting. You've done a lot of work on that.
Yeah,
it's probably a power dynamic,
right?
Because people won't admit this, but like in that scenario, there's a power dynamic.
Oh, some men will be threatened by you and your success for sure.
Really?
100%. At the beginning, they won't admit that. At the beginning, no, I love it. I love how driven you are.
Portray security. You're not naturally. You wouldn't be attracted to an insecure man. So if I'm not fully secure with myself, I would probably have to portray that I am.
Right.
But that's a power shift, because now that you have gotten to know me a little bit better, now I have to continue acting, or I'll show you the real me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So
it is
power dynamic.
Yeah, it is definitely. I mean, sometimes I think it stems from like childhood trauma, and it stems from like this kind of, the way like they've
I also
experienced
don't think
things.
women realise how intimidating they can be as well.
I am quite intimidating.
So, I think it was, I don't know who said it, but it was a good point, which is where if a man goes on a night out, his job is to find a woman as close to his ideal as possible. When a woman goes on a night out, they have the opportunity to pick from a whole variety of men that fit the demographic they want. So we'll come to predominantly
Men, basically what you're saying is men take what they can, women take what they want, right?
Pretty much, yeah, you're right.
More or less.
But it's frustrating though, because like you say that, because what happens is though, I feel like I genuinely believe that like I don't want to say men, I don't want to like kind of categorize men, but it's certain men who feel like they can kind of take and they can manipulate and they can be deceiving to get what they want. Yeah. And then we don't hold the men accountable. We go, God, she's a slag. She's a slag. Oh my God, you slept with him. Well, you should have picked better men. And it's like, no, why don't we start teaching men how to not be deceptive and how to not treat, how to not coerce women into bed with them, and then giving a woman a name for it. Well, God, we're getting very deep, aren't we?
No, you're right on that though.
Yeah.
You can't get rid of the communication element because human communication is very deceptive. Like if you're being
in
nice,
those initial stages,
it's
hard to be completely authentic because you don't know each other.
Human communication is deceptive by nature.
But I think if you're secure enough, like I don't know if that's true, because I feel like why would you?
Secure enough.
So this is the perfect. That's why I think you're building the perfect argument for it, because if you have a sense of security, authenticity is not for sale.
Yeah.
So
I think it just comes naturally though.
Yeah. So you don't have to have some bravado or some kind of like manipulative tactic to get,
or like try and like big yourself up more, like things like just small little things like that. And that's what sometimes I notice, especially because I'm dating now, by the way. I'm dating now, I'm back in the scene now. And what I notice is like sometimes when I speak to men and I feel like it's almost like they big themselves up. Obviously, there was a guy that I was speaking to.
To the stops.
Yeah, I was like speaking to a guy and he was kind of like, he said something, right? He was like, because I like to romanticize my life a little bit, right? I'll wake up in the morning, I'll have my meditation music on and I'll ease myself in the day. I'll go downstairs, make me cute little coffee and I'm romanticizing my life, trying to have like a really nice, pleasant day today. So I was saying, oh yeah, like I romanticize my life. And he was like, are you going to romanticize me? I went, no, I don't romanticize men. Like, come on, like let's take them at face value. So anyways, he was like, oh, but you'd expect me to romanticize you. And I was like, men and women are very different. I'm sorry, but like biologically, we're very different. Yeah. So anyways, there was a thing of like, he was really trying to big himself up. Like he wanted me to chase him. And he was like, oh yeah, like I'm an architect, I'm this, I'm that. And he's telling us all these things. I'm thinking, you just want to try and feel important. Like, what you want me to chase you? This is so weird. So
one of the things through the hypnotherapy that my therapist was talking to me about is how important, not necessarily the chase, but to keep that element of ego from both sides.
Okay.
Because if you get too comfortable, then there's no excitement.
You need a bit of back and forward, of course.
Do, so you need an element of chase, but but that needs to be authentic.
Yes,
it doesn't need to be it can't be too ego driven. It's based on I can stand. I have my standards. I'm okay on my own.
Yeah,
I love you, but this needs to be right for me.
It comes back to what you said earlier about character being the baseline.
Yeah.
Because if you have good character, it's almost like you can extrapolate what you've just said, and it doesn't burn the house down.
Yeah.
You need that element of, they need to be in your head, sort of thinking, well, what are they up to today? Or there needs to be that degree of, you can't be fully comfortable.
Yeah.
You have to, because I think that's where the excitement comes from.
Yeah.
The lust, the passion. So there's different elements to it. But it has to be healthy. There has to be communication.
That wears out real quick. So I actually believe it's more compassion, like a game of
well, we spoke about this recently. Yeah.
Because there's different types of like dynamics when it comes to dating. But when we talk about like love and relationships, I think intimacy is what everyone craves.
Vital.
Especially for women. Like women crave intimacy. Men do as well. We maybe just don't admit it as much.
Yeah.
so important.
You definitely want to just lie there and have someone stroking your head and rubbing your chest.
100%. I get foot massages all the time.
You want to get cradled like a little baby, like this. Come on, it's all right. You've
Big old baby.
But no, both men and women crave intimacy, but intimacy is quite a fragile thing to build an entire relationship on, because coming back to what we're saying about human communication, how complex it is in its nature, if you base an entire relationship on intimacy, it's like it's more lustful, isn't it? It's rather than actually like connection. The real challenge is, can you be pissed off with your partner and still be compassionate towards them? That's when you'll realize how much you actually care about that person, because it's a compassion game. Because you're going to need that same level of compassion back when you're not performing to the standard that person's expecting from you. And
I get that, but then I also think there's a difference of like being compassionate for someone and then also like not being getting disrespected. Oh
yeah, 100%.
Because like for instance, like most people probably have like some sort of trauma, childhood trauma, whatever. I wouldn't say so. No, I would say like
because in order for me to be disrespected, I have to attach myself to an identity of who I am. So who are you disrespecting, the identity or me?
Oh, getting a bit deep.
I get what you're saying.
But if I feel disrespected, it doesn't necessarily mean that I am being disrespected. So there's a separation between you and your identity.
But you have your standards, right? So you have your standards. So I think there's an element of ego, but also you get to a point, I think, when you've been through, you've had your relationships that don't work, you've been with the people that not maybe the match. So you have your standards, you have your non-negotiables. So that's probably when, if those lines are being crossed, then it's a case of, right, that dynamic's not necessarily right.
I mean, I would like to hope that the person would be long gone by that point, though.
Yes, but then I think, for me in the relationship I'm in now, there's been elements of compromise, which is something which I've never done before. I would never compromise. And I was really egotistical. It was a case of, no, this is the way my life, my career fit around that. And it was never anyone else's fault. It was always everyone else's fault. It was never me. I never looked inwardly. So this is the first time.
Oh, you sound like a delight. No.
No, but you're right though. It's not nice, that is it? That's how it was. Yeah. And I really was. So when I made all these changes,
it's a lot to unlearn, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was a huge amount, and I'm still going through. But this is the first relationship I've had since I've been on this self-development journey over the last year, where I've been looking to work on those areas, work on the trauma. Why am I programmed to go down these certain avenues? How do I fix that? And it's exciting, but I think it also takes being with someone that loves you enough to understand these areas, see the good in you, and want to be a part of that journey.
Yeah, I do get that.
God, I'm dreading the clips from this episode.
And what's going on?
This episode has been brilliant so far.
Really?
This is the best episode BOP's ever done.
Get in.
So,
Cheers, man.
We've touched on a lot there,
yeah,
but I wanted to tie some of it back to self-love.
Okay, right.
This is a huge part of, again, your I want to say movement, because it is a movement. Like self-love is a movement in itself. It's probably one that women resonate with a lot more than men do.
Yeah.
However, I think if you meet a man who understands what self-love is and what it represents, that's probably a man that's pretty secure within himself.
Yeah.
So...
Well, it's kind of like self-love means something different to everyone, because there's loads of different ways that you can show yourself love and compassion and stuff. I think for me personally, it's really trying to like accept myself as I am whilst I'm growing. Whilst I'm growing, whilst I'm changing. Doing both. Like, and it's really kind of like understanding, having that compassion towards myself when I'm going through certain things, and I might pick up bad habits and I might do this. And it's really not like beating myself up all the time, because I went through that so bad. And obviously, being on TV, being in the limelight, there's a lot around kind of the papers do things about your body, and there's all these papers. Oh, like she's in this bikini, she looks terrible like this. Oh, you can see all of this cellulite. And I feel like because of that, it threw us into like this
Changes
space.
the inner voice.
It changes the inner voice because you start really focusing on beauty standard, and especially because social media is such a big part of most people's lives now.
Keep up with, by the way.
Well, exactly. Well, there's no such thing as it. It's basically
How do you
it's all about
avoid that in the industry you're in,
capitalism.
though?
What do you mean?
How do you avoid looking at the aesthetics of things?
So it's a mindset shift. You have to shift your mindset on it. You have to start looking into this subject, and you have to start looking and reading into like the beauty standards, why it's a thing. Why is the beauty standards a thing? Well, it's all about capitalism. Yeah. It's all about selling. It's all about money. That's all it is. It's to go, you need this, you need to change that. And I feel like, especially, I mean, I don't know about,
you could even say it's one person's preference.
Yeah.
Because there's about 100 families that rule the world. I'm sure we can all agree upon that.
Yeah.
Right? But then it's like, who's important and who's powerful within that? It's probably a few blokes. And then it's like, if you keep going down, it probably narrows down to like a few people's personal preference, and then that's extrapolated to all beauty standards globally. And that is what people are trying to keep up with.
It's like it's like, what's it called? Is it like patriarchy, and like it's like quite it's like misogynistic and stuff. So it's like, I think for me, like my goal is I've been around like people who have got very, very bad body image of themselves. I've been around it, and I've seen how detrimental it is to people's mental health. And I always knew in myself, I was like, this is not right. The way that people are thinking, the way that I was thinking at one point, you know, when I was doing these skinny teas and I was doing this like, you know, 1,000 calories a day, like stupid stuff like that. That is like
it's
just
hard to escape. I think that's why people conform, and that's why people follow beauty standards, because it's hard to escape, not just like in society, but even if you're looking in the mirror and you'd feel less content or dissatisfied. Yes, you can investigate and research why you feel that way, but also that's probably going to be tied to like not just a book that you've studied, but like something else.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's a bit of a minefield, beauty standards, because it can be extrapolated to like everything, even like your skin color. Like, you know.
But you've created quite, very successful following of what seems like from you being authentic. So that's no mean feat building that up.
Yeah,
so do you feel pretty content with where you're at and with
like,
the information you're given on that?
Yeah, I'm definitely proud of like kind of the way that I'm using my platform, because I know that like sometimes I think influencers or whatever, they have a bad name sometimes because they just put anything out there for engagement, you know what I mean? And you know, it's like very clickbaity and stuff like that, which I think personally for me, I always have it, I come from a place of where I'm trying to help others. That's it, because I know that like I would have done anything like to grow up and find somebody's platform like where they're showing the things that are very normal, very human, you know, like fair enough, the tits are not that perky. Fair enough, I might have a bit of cellulite on the leg. Like, it's actually not that deep. You know what is deep? You know what's actually more important? The person that you are, because you're changing, you're evolving
also,
all of the time.
You can't escape the aging process.
You can't.
Even if you look amazing now,
100%.
there will be a point in your life where you have to come to terms with the fact that your body is deteriorating.
Yeah.
And there's got to be more to you than just how you look.
But I do think one of the most attractive things in a person is when someone is confident in who they are.
Yeah.
That comes before any aesthetic. It's not, now that could be quite hypocritical to say, because you obviously look and you see the aesthetics first. Yeah. But I think when you
get to know them,
exactly, that's the thing that I think keeps you there.
Yeah,
because if someone is even if they're on a journey to understand themselves, that's attractive.
Yeah.
When someone is being authentic to
themselves. Transformation's 12 months away.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, at least.
Yeah, it's
like if you want to work,
journey. It takes a long time.
Like, transformation's 12 months away at most. You know, if you've really, really let yourself go, then you just maybe a few years. But like it's one of those.
That was me.
But it's one of those things that it's always an option to you. But I think what you said earlier about doing both, like balancing self-praise and self-criticism is so important, because when you are growing, pain, frustration and struggle is still present. Yeah. But if it's internal, as in it's your self-dialogue that's adding to that pain and adding to that frustration and adding to that struggle, there's no escape. There's no moment of rest. You're just constantly beating yourself
and
up.
you know what? It slows the process down, I think. So for one of my main things was the internal dialogue. That was the main thing for me. It was the way that I seen myself. So when I'm like really focused and I feel like I'm dead fat, and it's like, actually, do you know what? Like, it's actually fine. Like, you're literally fine. And nothing good comes from being like self-critical and like deprecating. Nothing good. So I think like loving yourself in your being, but also in your becoming. I'm not saying love yourself exactly.
Like
Do you know what I mean? Like in your being,
that.
where you are now, you can still love yourself.
Yeah.
You might have a few extra pounds. You might have a lot of extra pounds, or you might have loads of cellulite, or you might have like things.
This is also the same reason why bodybuilders have body dysmorphia. They look great. But there's some of the most mentally unwell people that you'll ever meet because
that mindset on it
changed, but mentally and spiritually you're the same person.
Yeah.
But I think one of the key things you were saying there is loving who you are, but also loving where you're going. But I think the key point of that is at least making this first step to get wherever it is you want to go.
Yeah.
Because I think that helps love who you are now. If you're like, right, but I'm trying to get here.
Yeah.
You know, because I think that gives you an understanding of acceptance of who you are.
Yeah.
And it gives you a degree of purpose because you sort of see, right, I'm trying to go in this direction. You might not even know where that's going, but I just think as long as you're trying to make some moves.
Yourself grace.
Yeah. A little bit of compassion. I think people are too hard on themselves. I think they put too much pressure on themselves, and I'm not going to lie, like I'm definitely one for that. But like I'm trying not to be. Like I'm trying to really give myself that grace and compassion that like I would give to other people. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
because it's like
because your inner child hasn't gone anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
So like that child that was told, no, don't do this, make sure you do this, is like bombarded with a set of rules, and now as an adult you are now creating more rules through your internal dialogue that inner child has to adhere to, and it just gets really overwhelming. I can remember one time I was just pouring my eyes out. I was crying because I realized that I was being too hard on myself, and I didn't understand why I was so upset or why it got me so emotional, but it was just purely based on the fact that I was like, this is my first attempt at life. And I was being so hard on myself to the point where I was like, why am I forgetting that this is my first shot?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to have everything figured out. I'm not going to be perfect.
Yeah.
I am a work in progress. And
you're going to make mistakes. You're going to do things that are not, that might not necessarily align with your values and stuff. And I feel like...
Or other people might not understand.
Yeah, other people might disagree
that's
or whatever.
Fine.
Yeah, but I think I just think with the whole self-love thing, I feel like I really, really want to just try and... for myself as well, just get women to a place in their mind where they're so comfortable with herself, because I feel like because there's all of this like pressure for women to look and be a certain way, and it's kind of like you need to be like this and then you need to be like that, and it's like you're trying to attract a man, like you're attracting the wrong attention, all this. It's like
I feel like you use health and wellness for all the right reasons.
Yeah.
If that's your foundation.
Self-love
is your foundation.
Yeah.
You utilize health and wellness for the right reasons.
Yeah.
If it's not your foundation, you utilize health and wellness.
It's like a punishment.
To fill like gaps.
Yeah, it's like bit of a because you can go and you can be literally so healthy. You could be training in the gym every day. This. But when it's coming from a place of I don't like myself, I need to be like the smallest version of myself or the like tonedest version of myself, and it's not coming from a place of like I just want to be happy within myself. Like, I want to
an identity thing.
You're building a house on insecurity. You're building a house on sand because the foundations of who you are is I don't appreciate you. And what appreciates, what you don't appreciate, depreciates. So you're going to get more of that as the journey goes on. So as time passes, you're actually going to hate yourself more for the changes that you've made.
Yeah.
Well, the further down that path you go,
it's
hard to come back.
I feel like, so for me, for my personal experiences, like obviously I've been kind of in and out of the gym. Like I've never really been as like consistent as probably what like most
gym's
other
hard, though.
It is hard, but I feel like a lot of it was a little bit more of it felt more punishing. Like I felt like I wasn't enjoying it. It was more punishing because I was like I was going for the wrong reason. Now that I've got this mindset shift, like I actually go on my walks and I'm like, oh, sometimes I can't be arsed. But like I go on my walks because I'm like, no, like I deserve to move my body. I deserve to feel good.
That's
rather than like I need to go to the gym because I need to, like, I can't, be a certain way. I can't be a certain weight. I need to, look good or whatever. Like,
it's self-nurturing rather than self-punishment.
So now when I go to the gym or like now when I go on my walks and stuff, like, it's not as...
You hear that, Daps? Get to the gym, boy.
It's not as like, it's not as uncomfortable. Like, I literally, so sometimes I used to get these feelings in my body, like say if I had a PT session with you and I used to be like, oh, I've got a gym in the morning, And I used to wake up in the morning and it was like, I couldn't think of anything worse. Like my whole body was rejecting this gym session. Obviously, I had to go. And when I was, there was so many times that I would literally nearly burst into tears in the gym.
I think at the time there was a lot of emotions. Like we were saying,
that's also an ADHD thing. I think there as well.
Oh, okay.
I think just like the pre-planning in your head and just the anxiety on social events.
Yeah.
At least for me.
We had a guest on, and he was talking about how emotional gyms actually are. Because the gym is the one place where you might actually experience your first moments of silence.
Okay.
And I don't mean physical silence, I mean mental silence.
Mental silence, yeah.
So when you experience that mental silence, it's quite overwhelming.
Right.
So like people panic.
Yeah.
Sometimes when they get that moment of mental silence because it's really discomforting.
Well, do you want to know something interesting? Of course you do. So like basically, I was reading this book called The Body Holds the Score, and it goes into like, say if you've experienced like trauma. So sometimes when you can't process certain emotions, it becomes stored within your within your cells and stuff within your body, and basically what he was saying is like when you've experienced trauma, when you go to the gym, what you're doing is you're like really depleting the mental part of your brain and your body, like you're depleting it. So that's why sometimes when you're in the gym, you literally want to burst into tears because the emotions that you're pushing down and you're trying to keep at bay, they come up, they're trying to express themselves. And that was a lot of the time for me. Like, that's why I kind of didn't enjoy going to the gym because I knew there was just, it took a lot out of us. There was so many times where I would literally sat there like with a lump in my throat and he's going, cry. I'm in the middle of a gym. Loads of gym bros around. He's going, get it out, stop holding it in. I was like, swallowing me little tears. I was like, no, but like, and it makes so much sense now that I've got that understanding of like when you're in the gym and you're depleting yourself, you're depleting your body, and sometimes it can feel very uncomfortable, very like distressing, if almost sometimes.
Yeah, well, suppression leads to depression.
Exactly.
Unfortunately.
No, I agree. I think that because that's one of the biggest things we'll advocate on here is just communicating.
Yeah.
Because
that's the biggest form of therapy.
Maybe people. This is one people can always relate. When it's internalized, it's hard to understand that other people will be able to relate. It's hard to understand that other people will maybe even be going through something similar, if not the same.
But I'm also
as soon as you communicate,
finding your method, your strategy.
Yeah.
It's so personal.
I feel like finding
what works for one person could be catastrophic for the next.
Yeah, exactly.
So
finding movement that feels good. I feel finding movement that feels good. I love hot yoga. Like I love hot yoga. I love doing that. And I've been sometimes where I'm lying in the hot yoga thing, I'm crying my eyes out, but it's fine because it's dark, no one can see it. And I'm like,
Have you ever done a sound bath?
Yeah, of course. I've got Tibetan sound balls.
Dude, I knew you would.
Of course.
They're great, aren't they?
I do a lot recently. Hand pan. Could you put that on, Dabs? Hand pan.
Oh, is it the ding 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 ding?
Absolutely. Honestly, I'm an absolute whore for hand pan.
Mate, have you ever been to a sound bath?
I've got one of those.
You've got a crystal one.
They do it in Whitley Bay. This full thing you're going. We'll do one.
I feel like I've seen that one. I feel like I've seen.
We'll get ourselves to one. They're great.
Martin.
One of these. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very. They do a lot of these in the nature, don't they? That's that in nature in the garden.
This guy, honestly, he's changed my life, man. He just
really.
So what do you in the morning? Do you listen to this?
Bro, just so chill. He's got one called Seeds of Growth, and it's just incredible. Like it's just the most chill thing You can just imagine me just meditating and this shit. But like,
oh my
if
God.
I want to chill myself the hell out, like this is just the one.
Do you know what? There's something really interesting that I want to say because obviously I'm full of interesting things. So basically, as I've been looking into it, because I'm very, very big on like kind of like you know, psychology and trauma. I love researching this stuff. Like I feel like I'm going to become a psychologist at one point in my life. I do.
You're sort of doing that in a way anyway.
Do you?
With your content for sure.
I mean, I've got
You're gonna
no
help a lot of people
qualifications, but no. So basically, so I was like looking at this thing. So it's really, you're not going to believe it.
Brain fog.
Lost me fucking train of thought. I've lost my train of thought again.
We'll circle back to that one then.
Oh no! This is the honestly, it's so frustrating. Yeah, true.
So do you know what? The one thing that I will say is you're much more like, no, I've lost my train of thought. For me, I'm like, right, how do I
do you
now
start panicking?
I just started coming out with other random stuff.
Right.
I can see Mike going, what the
bipolar,
fuck's he
so I
talking
experience
about?
both.
Right.
So I lose my train of thought and I've got to fucking circle back to that shit and
Right.
connect all the dots. So it's
I always just say it because I just feel like I feel like there's been times where I always just start rambling on. Someone's probably looking at what I'm talking about now. Where's this gone?
Abstract thought, that's the one I struggle with. Like I'll say something and I'll connect it to a whole different thing. That's just bring together.
Neurospicy bitches.
But, we'll wrap it up there, shall we?
Yeah, that was wicked.
Thank you.
Really
Thanks so
enjoyed
much for having
you
us on.
No,
I know I did ramble a bit there, didn't I?
No,
That's what we do.
Sorry.
that's what we got you on
I'm
for.
unmedicated.
Love that. Love it.
But yeah, thanks for having us on.
A pleasure.